Welcome, everyone. I am super excited to be here with Hayley. Thank you so much for joining me, Hayley.
Absolutely.
I am looking forward to our conversation. Any funny stories?
Yeah. Um, so we get all of the seasons up here. And one of the seasons that maybe everyone is not familiar with is mud season. And so we get like a pretty heavy spring. We get tons and tons of rain. And last year, we had this awkward time where it was snowing, freezing, melting, raining, snowing, freezing, raining, melting. And it just kept repeating and repeating. So when we moved onto the property, there was no roads and we made them all. And so we had a lot of roads to make. And I mean, we're not the best at making roads, but like we made the roads mainly by driving them. So when we moved to the upper part of the property in November, there's a really steep driveway and there is basically mud roads. And when we were getting this freezing and then snowing, freezing, raining, and repeat, we got stuck like a lot, like super, super stuck. And it started with my dad. So we've all got white Dodges, Dodge pickups. And first, my dad gets his stuck in the middle of the road to leave. So we can't really get off our property. So we made a new road. My brother-in-law and sister were on vacation. So my dad borrowed my brother-in-law's truck because he got his real stuck. We tried and tried, couldn't get it unstuck. So he drove my brother-in-law's truck, got my brother-in-law's truck stuck on the road, the only road off the top of our property. So we used our quad trail. My husband was trying to get my um, brother-in-law's truck unstuck so that we could be passing through our road and not have to like rock crawl and cruise through trees and like scratch up all of our trucks. And he got our truck stuck. And it was so bad. So
How many trucks are stuck right now?
there's three trucks.
Okay, three trucks stuck.
So we're trying and trying to get them unstuck. My husband, we have a 10,000 pound winch on the front of our truck, and we wrapped it to a tree, like nothing would get us unstuck. And then it froze,
No.
and all of the trucks were buried in mud down to the drive line and differential, and our trucks froze to our road.
Wow.
Our neighbor came over and tried to get our trucks unstuck, and he broke the drive line on his truck. So we were super stuck, and that resulted in basically an entire spring of we put laundry baskets on the front and back of our four-wheelers, and we had to drive out to the neighbors with like any groceries we brought home. We were currently doing laundry in town at the laundromat, so we just had like these heaping laundry baskets. Really, really looked like a bunch of hillbillies just
Just trying
sitting
to make
around
it.
just trying to get home with our stuff. And at one point, I was like, one part of our driveway is kind of like this. So I was holding, like, we were purchasing raw milk in town, and I was like holding on to my raw milk and like trying to get up the road. So that's my story. Good times. It'll probably
Off-grid
happen again.
living.
Yeah, pretty much.
So you can find Hayley at Three Pines Family Farm. She talks a lot about Jesus, off-grid living, and making real food. Can you tell me a little bit about your food journey and the diagnoses that led you to how you're living
Yeah.
now?
So before we moved, we've been up here for April will be 2 years. And before we moved, I had like a general grasp on nutrition, as in like I knew I shouldn't be going to McDonald's, and I knew, just things like that. I cooked at home all the time, but I just didn't have a more in-depth grasp than that. And so after we moved, a little bit of it, without telling my mom's story completely, a lot of it had to do with my mom. She has a lot of autoimmune issues, and so many of those can be kind of reined in through diet. And so she learned that, and she actually just kind of stumbled, like just kind of in the pits. She stumbled upon like animal-based eating and carnivore
Mhm.
based nutrition. And she just dove right in, like just cold turkey went into it. And she was just like, she's like, I'm starting to feel better. You should join me. And I was just like floored. My mom's out walking her dog, and like I mean, she was chair bound,
Mhm.
and she's out walking her dog and like getting sunshine and just doing 1,000 times better in like 4 weeks. And I was like, yeah, if nothing else, to just support her. I knew it certainly couldn't help or hurt me. So I'm like, yeah, I'm there. And I just did it the next day. Poor woman had to listen to me walk into her trailer and complain every stinking day. Like, this sucks. I want bread. And but I stuck it out, and time went on, and a lot of the issues that we struggled with infertility. Um, just like I had hormone issues that if you went in, they're just like, well, we'll put you on this or that. And that's not the goal that I had. I wanted to be free of as many things as I could. And so it started to change pretty much every aspect of my life. I was sleeping better, and that affects your hormones. All of these things were going on, and they were just slowly being corrected by a complete, 180 in nutrition. Um, dropped 50 pounds. That didn't hurt my feelings one bit. Just a lot of things that we came up here to live a better, cleaner, more focused life. And you're pretty focused when you pretty much are just eating beef, eggs, butter. When you kind of throw away everything else and you narrow it all down. That was huge for me. A lot of times when people are seeking nutrition, they're like, well, what can I have? I can't have any of this. I can't have the bread. I can't have all of that. But this gave me a new mindset of like, just stop thinking about that, what you can't have, and make yourself a list of the things that you can have, and you will succeed. And I have, and I feel so much better. And I can't even go back to, I can't even go back. When I eat bread, I feel like I got ran over by a truck and set on fire. So anyway, that's kind of my little testimony with real food. Just I haven't had up until Christmas, but I hadn't had preservative. I don't drink at all anymore. It just it makes me happy to see how far I've come, and just how I've been able to guide my family like that and educate my children on nutrition. Because when that starts young, I think about all of the issues that I had that were rooted in nutrition, and they get to skip that because they already will know, and they will get to guide their children and, future generations. And maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't, but it's a major one up on what I had. And I thought I was growing up, healthy. My mom did things different than other people did, but it's been a life-changing thing, and it's all because of food.
Awesome. Can you walk me through your food cycle?
Just like a day in the life.
Yeah, how you gather, how you process, how you.
Oh, we primarily, our meat primarily is either hunted, but like as far as farm goes, we raise meat goats, and chickens and ducks, and then pigs. And so, for us, we typically butcher one goat a year. However, this year, will be, well, I guess technically last year is when we butchered that one, but this season we'll actually be doing four. And so we typically hang them for a few days. We do have to wait until it's cooler. We don't have a processing room or anything like that. We have to wait till it's cooler so that the bears won't just climb the tree and just pull all of our meat out. Um, we actually had to hang our goat, our previous one, just to my left. Was like the pinnacle of my hillbilly life right there, walking past a goat every time I went inside. So, but I mean, you gotta protect the food. It was a weird winter. It's been warm, so we weren't even sure the bears were hibernating, so we just hung it off the porch. Um, so we'll hang it for a couple of days. And then this year we actually went through a big learning thing, and we realized that for us and life being busy and having the kids involved, it's better for us to just do it in sections. So we were just pulling pieces off and working on perfecting our skill and really doing clean cuts, because last year we were a little upset with ourselves when we were pulling stuff out of the freezer. So we broke it up over a couple of days and then ended up getting a crazy respiratory illness, and that, so it actually took us five days on one goat, but we learned a lot. Anyway, so we primarily grind all of our goat. It makes great sausage. And then we do a couple of roasts, and then we leave the legs for like big family barbecues and stuff like that. We'll do them slow on the barbecue. And then typically we actually hand some over to a neighbor because he makes incredible goat curry. And so he'll cook some of that up and invite us all over. And then eggs from the chickens. We cycle our laying hens out pretty quick. I usually don't let them get older than 2, just because if I'm going to feed them, I want them to produce what they're going to maximum, their maximum production. And once they start to decline, I just don't want to keep them. We do chicks every spring, sometimes several batches. Once I get the off-grid situation figured out, we'll go back to hatching. I have 130 slot incubator, and I just have to figure out how to keep it running without any issues. So that's where we get like our chicken. We'll probably do meat birds this year, but we're so new in our infrastructure. So we're just kind of trying not to get in over our heads. And then we have pigs this year that will be wintering, which will be a new experience. So 5 of those are set to go. We still haven't decided if we're going to take them to a butcher or do it ourselves, but that'll happen in the spring. And then other than that, it's just hunting and gardening, which is not my favorite thing to do.
What's your garden setting up to look like in the spring?
So a little bit interesting situation. We put a lot of time into our garden. We had to make it deer proof. Most people do, but we have like an 8-foot fence around it. And that's the first thing we did when we moved up here. And we were all in trailers at the lower part of the property where the garden sits. November, we moved up here, last November. And so the gardens down there were up here. And we just realized we didn't love it. We want to utilize that space down there, but out of sight, out of mind, because we're on a, I guess they call it multi-generational homestead. My parents help with the garden. My sister and brother-in-law help with the garden. So we just cycle on like who's watering, and we're all involved in planting and harvesting and stuff. But we realized we really don't enjoy going down there. I personally love to just gawk at my garden on a regular basis. I want it in my face. And so we're moving our garden. So it's stacking up to be interesting. That's all I can say. I have no idea what it's going to look like. There'll be food in it, but something might eat it, if we're being honest. And that something won't be us, probably.
Yeah. Can you walk me through RV, new property, RV, to building and now transitioning to a full-time homestead? What did that look like?
Yeah. So we rolled in, all 3 of us, or all 3 families. That's 11 of us total. It was 10, but we got a little mountain baby in the process. My sister and brother-in-law had their daughter in March. So we rolled up, and we had no infrastructure. Our spring was undeveloped. So we knew we had to live below the spring. So we spent the first almost full year gravity feeding out of our spring for water. Most important thing is water. And then working on that. Being at the bottom of the property was really challenging because there was so much clay. When it gets wet, we spent our first spring down there. I have so many mud stories. Oh my gosh. But we knew we had to get up top. And so we did that, got all the trailers up here. Most nerve-wracking day of my life, next to actually pulling them up this mountain. That gave me heart problems. I'm pretty sure that'll never go away.
For start.
I don't know if I'm just a wimp, but something about watching your whole life just like teeter on a switchback, it's like, So we get up here and we're set up, and then you got to get water coming up the mountain now instead of just gravity feeding down, and we've managed to get that pretty well ironed out. Um, we weren't supposed to start building our home for 3 years. So we still had another year that we were supposed to wait. Just like that's kind of how we figured would be the best sequence of events. But last winter, our furnace went out in our trailer in the dead of winter. Fortunately, we all installed uh, wood fireplaces, and that saved us. But like one of the big issues with RV living, especially long term, is that you get a lot of condensation and then you're getting mold, and you can run your air purifiers and your dehumidifiers and all of that, but eventually it just, you kind of can't keep up. And for us, we had like ice just trailing down the wall. I would wake up with a beanie that was soaking wet because the condensation from breathing at night was causing it to just pour down on us. My pillow was wet, pulling the bed away during the day just to get some airflow because I was finding mold. Just long-term coughs, and we knew health was kind of circling the drain if we kept living in it. So we just went to town. So we broke ground April of 2023, and we moved in October like 13th of 2023. And that was with my husband working a full-time job. Well, we have a mobile heavy equipment repair business. And so he was working 4 days a week. I was like, you can't work more than that. We can't just do this off of 2 days a week. So basically 3 days a week we were out here mobbing away, getting it done. We are not contractors. It was a very interesting time in my life.
Yeah.
We'll see how long the puppy lasts.
It hasn't blown over yet.
It hasn't. It hasn't. I'm really grateful. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so it's a metal building. They're designed as shops, and people call them barn dominiums. But it's like a steel frame. So I've got like all the exposed steel inside. My husband keeps trying to convince me to cover it up, and I'm gonna fight him. It's a hill I'll die on. You don't cover up my my frame. And yeah, we insulated it. We put the floor in. We put in the wood stove, which is a wood cook stove. It's my favorite part of our house. And then we moved in. And that's all we've got so far. No walls. It's open. We have curtains hanging everywhere. And we haul all our water in from a bucket out front, which probably is going to start freezing this week. But yeah, it's been a huge blessing. It's one of those things that I wouldn't have expected to work out so well. It was a huge God thing. Like there's no way any of this would have lined up and just worked out. And we got the right help when we needed it, the right suggestions when things were going wrong. Um, it was kind of just an uphill battle, but it was like a peaceful one. It doesn't really sound right, but like it was a lot for people who don't build houses. But we built a house.
Built the house. You're living in it, and it was under a year. That's huge. Can you talk a little bit about having a multi-generation setup and how that supports you as being a mama?
Yeah, it's huge. Um, one of the biggest things that I think that a lot of people either aren't able to utilize or, choose not to for whatever reason is family. And previously how we were living before we moved here, we were already so tight knit. I'm very close with my parents. Um, and I'm very close with my sister and my nieces. And we lived along a highway in Oregon, and my sister was at the town at this end. I was in the middle, and my parents were down here, and it was everybody always converged for weekly, family dinners, everything like that. And, we just kind of developed this idea, long story short, and moved up here together. And as a mom, like being able to watch my kids from the deck, just kind of cruise down to Nana's and see my niece just plodding up here in her oversized boots, slipping around in the mud, and just coming up to say hi. Having, when you need that break or you need to connect with your spouse, or just, we have date nights that literally consist of our kids just going down. We split them between my mom and dad and my sister and brother-in-law, and we just like cook dinner, milk our goats, play some cards, and it's like date night.
Yeah.
It's really valuable, and I think it's really going to shape my kids, just seeing like that tight family unit. I mean, we're not perfect, like, you know, I don't want to paint like this overly dreamy picture, but like overall, there's a lot to be said for living in close proximity to your family. And, we started going to church. We found a church finally. We feel we're half the church, all 11 of us. It's awesome. I love it.
That's great. Um, well, you talk a lot about self-sufficiency and can anyone just do this, or what are the steps if you were to give recommendations or advice, what would that look like?
I get a lot of the questions in my messages, and some of them are super funny because of the way that people choose to word them. Overall, my answer is yes, anyone can. But the big thing to think about is, like, if I were to give steps, they're based off my experience and how I got here. And I can talk about them, and I can, and that's a good idea. It's a good like starting ground. But when I thought about it further, because I get the question so often, and sometimes people are like, no, everyone can't do that. And it's like, yeah, I get that. We literally just walked away. We closed up our life and we walked away. And then we started over here where there was nothing. It's not, everyone can do it, but they might not want to. Um, the starting ground, I would say, is where do you want to live? If you want to stay in the same state or you don't, find out the cottage food laws, find out the homeschooling laws, because it seems like homesteading and homeschooling are hand in hand, and most people want to homeschool. So, I hear a lot that the East Coast is fighting homeschooling. Do you want to homeschool? Don't move to the East Coast. Find out what the cottage food laws are. What are the property rates? And then look for properties. I highly recommend a property with water on it. They're really hard to find, so start now if you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, just things like that. People will ask, how much money do you have to start out like this? Not a question I can answer. How fast are you going to do it? Are you going to do it really fast? You need a lot of money if you want to do it really, really fast, especially ground up. If you want to take your time and suffer a little, you can do it with less money. But yeah, finding an area that supports your beliefs, your goals, and if you want to be really remote, we're remote. But the surrounding towns, the ones we choose to affiliate with, they have what we need. We found a good church. They have homeschooling. They support homeschooling heavily. It's a huge ag town, so that's great for our personal business. So, I mean, you just got to find your spot, and it takes some looking. You got to know what your price point is. You have to be able to live, you have to go somewhere where you can afford to live. So, I mean, I guess those are my biggest tips, is find out where you want to be, and then see what the community is all about. And honestly, just the property is the biggest thing, finding it. And I believe if you're meant to be on one, God will find it for you, because he dropped this one in our lap. We looked at some lemons. Oh, a realtor that showed us 180 acres for like this great price. I don't even remember. It was a stupid price. This was the whole property. There was a couple shelves. He's like, I found you 180 acres with views. And we're like, yes. No, I'm not a billy goat. It's a no. Well, and some realtors, especially with these remote communities and stuff, they kind of vet you. Like, you have to stick around and put up with them for a long time. And it was kind of funny because finally the realtor was like, so what do you guys do? and, you know, trying to get to know us because we had been making trips from Oregon to Idaho for months, 9-hour trips.
Wow.
And my dad's like, you know, my brother or my son-in-law and I are appliance repairmen, and he's like, oh, and he's like, my son-in-law repairs heavy equipment, and he's like, oh, and then it's like all of a sudden we get great properties to look at. It's like that's rude, but I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely takes a certain spirit and a certain heart. And I know it was mentioned back in season one, Natalie talked about, God gives you a vision, but he also
Mhm,
asks you to plan for it. And where
mhm,
there is no vision, as people perish.
mhm.
As far as, what to expect when people find you, are there any big misconceptions that you want to address?
Yes, there is. Yes, let me flip my hair back. Um, okay. If you are on social media and you post about being off grid, you get by the hundreds, depending on your following, people saying that just debating off grid. You're not off grid. You're
Mm.
not off grid. Off grid literally means I'm not connected to the power grid. We source our own power. We have solar panels and generators, and that's the only thing that it means. I still have a cell phone. And well, some people in the family have internet and I steal it regularly. I am not, it's not an underground bunker, and I am not trying to live like a hermit. I'm a social person in general. I just don't want to be connected to the power grid, and I want to be moderately harder to find. But that's all it means. It doesn't mean like I'm doomsday prepping in a cave I dug by hand. It's not. That's not what it means. And they just get nasty. And I don't engage at all because it is so ridiculous of all the things you could argue about. Why? Why? I live off grid, if you want to get technical.
Sure.
And I am preparing my life for things to get difficult. I want a life where I don't have all these fancy systems that when they fail, if they fail, no, it's when something always fails. I want to be able to fix them myself. Well, my husband will be the primary caretaker of that situation. I'll hand him a flashlight and like, you know, some wrenches, but I want to not struggle in the way that I know many would and I would previously, how we lived previously. We source our own water. That's so important to me. Um, and we do as much of our own food as we can. And we're still working towards like even more impressive goals, but that's my goal, and I'm doing it off grid. So the misconception that having a cell phone
Sure.
makes you not off grid is very silly. And
Debunked.
that, yes,
There's struggles, there's hard days, there's moments of saying, yes, this is exactly where we want to be, and it's very hard. Are there any Bible verses that help you get through those days?
absolutely. Um, so I have so many. I covered my house in them as we were building, but my two favorites are Jeremiah 29:11. And I know so many people are familiar with it. For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord, plans of prosperity and not of harm. And I've had to lean into that a lot because, you know, while we were sitting in a multi-trailer, that's not God's plan for us to be in a multi-trailer. But I firmly believe that when life gets a little uncomfortable, sometimes it's God's nudge to move. If we're comfortable, that's fine. There's seasons for resting and being comfortable, and God wants that for us. But there are times where we are very comfortable and he's like, go. And I'm not saying he's like, here's a multi-trailer for you, but I mean, there was probably mold when we bought it. So I mean, it was just like, boom, lots of mold, maybe build a house, and we did.
Mm.
Um, Another one that I love is Ecclesiastes 3:11. He has made all things beautiful in its time and set eternity in the hearts of man. And That one has followed me around for like 15 years. And it always pops into my head. He has made all things beautiful in its time. And I apply that in this season of life where sometimes I'm really grumpy about hauling water inside and boiling it on the stove and using it to do my dishes and then doing more to draw a bath. And I get a little grumpy about that, but it's a season and he is refining us through the seasons and they become beautiful again. And then we encounter more challenges and more struggles, and he refines us again and makes us stronger because you do not become stronger when life is easy. When life gets tough and tricky, that is when you grow. And I've been doing a lot of growing lately. So much growing.
That's not a complaint. That is true.
That is realizing that I have a very unique opportunity to just be growing continuously. And not everybody has that opportunity.
Thank you so much, Hayley.
You're welcome.